What is up, down, and sideways, you absolutely fantastic individuals? It's another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for our first in-season, that's right, not preseason, actual power rankings. Week 1 in the LEC and LCK, and we're sprinkling in a little extra this split. Going to be trying out some studs and duds from the week. That's obviously, in case the pun didn't do it for you, standout performers and guys who you maybe wanted a little bit more on the Rift. But again, it's LEC and LCK we're highlighting today.
Week 1 is so tough because you're so excited to get the season started, get these real matches underway, but you also realize it's absolutely not really enough of a sample size to make any type of really educated type of predictions and viewings of what you're seeing in the region. I like as well that we're adding in the studs and duds, give a little bit of an extra sprinkle to these power rankings. Let's waste no more time and dive right into them.
And when you start over in Europe, I think the bottom 4, no real surprises. SK, I think a lot of people had in the 10th spot. They really were the only team that looked kind of egregiously bad on the week, and the only 0-3 squad. Then you got a bunch of 1-2 squads that, again, Rogue, Heretics, Vitality, I think you all were kind of hovering in that bottom 4. G2 at 1-2, and the level that they were at is the first and main real surprise on this list.
Yes, and I think that's, not that G2 has been immune to the slow start bug that sometimes bites some of these teams at the beginning of a year type of thing. But to start out like this and to look as lackluster as they did in 2 out of the 3 games, that is the concern right now for G2. Because yes, you did get a relatively healthy bounce back victory to close things out against SK. But of course, a lot of people are going to be looking at SK and their strength and really their lack of cohesion and everything else with that team. Missing Niski big time is what you're seeing with SK. To get that win for G2 was important, of course, to stop the 0-3 slide and keep some type of pace in the LEC. As we know, if you get behind 0-3 in that first week, you've got an impossible task to make sure that you're making it through to that next round. So good one on G2 to make sure they hold steady, but it's careful ground.
Yeah, and I think the main concern going forward, listen, anytime you're changing jungle and support, those are 2 vital communication roles. It's going to take time, of course, for Lebrav and Skumon to be implemented into this lineup, but you do worry that there's too much on the shoulders of BB and Caps on this new look roster, especially even seeing Hans Sama on Draven. It didn't feel as scary or as lethal as we're accustomed to seeing a pick like that in his hands.
And I think a big part of that, again, is Mickey not being with this team. That cohesion, that group, that synergy that they had built, that communication as that trio really for so long. Even quad adding in Hans Sama into that mix is what they've been doing. It's certainly going to be a felt effect. And we're seeing that on the Rift. Adding on, you have Broken Blade and Caps, who I think are willingly taking on that extra responsibility, that extra communication load. Sometimes, even though you are willing to do that type of thing, you're up for that task, it is going to have a feeling out, a drawback type of period. And I think we're seeing that with those 2 star players for the G2 organization.
Ahead of G2, you got this, I'm going to say this next trio of 2-1 squads when you're talking Fnatic, Koi, BDS. Koi obviously got the head-to-head against Fnatic. They had one bad game, or more JoJo had a rough Ari game, but I think BDS as a team performance in that first week, you grade above the rest of them, and a lot of that is, we've got, actually they have quite a few changes, which is crazy because they seem to have adjusted so much quicker than G2, even though they had more roster changes.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see BDS hit the ground running again in another split like this. This is a team that has a pretty substantial change from what we have seen from them in the past. And so in order to continue the way that they have been climbing and edging themselves up further and further in the LEC standings, good to see. A good opening week from them. You mentioned on Fnatic losing to your boy Jojo Pyun with Mad Lions Koi, Movistar Koi, whatever we want to call it at this point. But Jojo Pyun seemingly is going to be how things go for this team, because in the match against KC, as you pointed out, a big dud from him. No charms, no kills, lots of deaths, didn't matter, because he steps back onto the Rift the next day and makes the hero play on the Yone, catching out 2 of the most mobile champions possible, and he catches them both in the same Yone ultimate. You love to see it from our boy.
Yeah, he definitely looked comfortable mechanics-wise on that Yone, but still at the top of the table after week 1. I think no question. Obviously, Giant X is the easy one at 3-0, but K-Corp right there alongside them. They had the head-to-head clash to close things out, or nearly close things out in week 3. But both these teams, you got to be absolutely thrilled with if you're fans of them. Carmine Corp, Kaliste has lived up to the hype so far. Yike has looked like he's stepped into that leadership role seamlessly. And on Giant X, maybe the biggest surprise, Jackie's is probably at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of guys you're talking about after the first week.
The best breath of fresh air you can get for a region is having teams like this, like Giant X, like K-Corp start to rise up, to challenge the established order of what is the elite of your region. And that's what you've seen this past weekend. Again, K-Corp is the one that I want to focus in on. And of course, the difference between their week 1 this year compared to week 1 last year is substantial. But the way that the prospect looks of where they can continue to grow and challenge in the LEC is even better for this team. And of course, the blue wall and all that support is behind them and very loud doing it for the LEC studio. And then ahead of them, Giant X. Really great week from them. Of course, the big one, though, is the bottom lane. Noah and Jun popping off big time, making everybody look like a fool, and especially Fnatic look like a fool for letting these two go. They absolutely were on fire this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the best bot lane in the league through that first week, and both them and, to a lesser extent, K-Corp with a guy like Yike, making their forward teams look at them with a single tear going down their eye going, man, I wish we could have just maybe kept these guys. Maybe they were actually the secret sauce to us succeeding, but very excited to see all 3 of those guys excelling in that first week of action. It's a great segue to some studs and duds from the LEC in that first week, because you highlighted Noah and Jun. Jackie's has been the guy to talk about for Giant X. Closer looking like it wasn't a fluke him being good on K-Corp, but I want to highlight the rookie in the top lane for Giant X. We're talking about Lot. We saw a 4v5 base defense that he held on his own on the Rumble. Some insane engages on Cassante. And I want to compare. It's unfair to him. But Oscar Rinnan, you remember his first weekend as a rookie? One of the worst debuts that we've seen. He ended up having actually a great career so far. But the other end of the spectrum is Lot's performance this weekend as a rookie.
Don't want to be any bit of a down party type of situation. You got to keep it going week after week. But 1 week from Lot here, very, very good, and absolutely the one player that I think does, above all the others in the LEC, deserve a little bit of recognition on what was special and what he was able to do. As you laid out, the Rumble performance, a big one. Jax throw in the Cassante. My man had it all this week, and really, when you're looking at the turnaround and the role that he plays in it for Giant X and how they're able to get through to this record, love that we're giving him the shout out. Lot, excellent job.
And again, on a roster that everyone's going to be talking about, Jackie's, Noah, Jun, even Closer kind of having a resurgence for his career, but my guy stood on top of all of them. Those are, obviously, you can highlight the performance of those guys as well. Kaliste and Yike both had great weeks as well to kick things off for Carmine Corp, but really want to highlight what this rookie has done. And even just looking at rookies this week, there were a lot of standout performances, but at the tippity top of all of them is what we got out of Lot. On the other end of it, the dud of the week. We got to go to the bot lane. We got to go support. I would accept Loopy on SK, but because he is a rookie, he gets a little bit more leeway. Do you know who's not a rookie, Mark? We're talking about a decade of professional play. It was Professor Hillisang on the Rift. There was some hilly int. He had some good engages on Rakan. I'll give him that. But the Rakan and Leona performances this week, him getting caught out time and time again, this was peak hilly int.
The problem with the hilly int gameplay in those engages that, yes, you're getting a couple of nice ones, sure, and it's contributing to the team and everything else. The cost of the ones that don't succeed are far too high, and it's happening too often to outweigh any of those type of plays that you are actually making. Unfortunate, Hill is saying this is absolutely not unfamiliar territory for him. He's been down in these type of depths. He's been called a dud, a loser all these times before, but he's absolutely been a champion at the exact same time in the same year, maybe the next week even, in these type of situations. So I'm not ruling him out, but no question about it, he is the dud of the week.
And absolutely, he could be on the stud list next week, depending on how things turn around. That's just kind of the polarity that this guy has as a player. But yeah, definitely not an ideal start. 21 deaths in 3 games is... I gotta reckon that Kalista doesn't get 21 deaths all winter split. That's my hot take.
Hey, look, that's the great "Who Am I" stat review at the end of the year type of one between these two. At the end of the day, looking through these power rankings, going through some studs and duds, I think overall a pretty solid week for the LEC, especially with these, Giant X and KC rising up. You got the next trio down below, Fnatic, Mad Lions, Koi, that type of territory. Who's going to be good from them? And then G2 waiting, lurking around, seeing if they can actually bite off a little bit more of that top end of the LEC.
And again, we'll say it again, G2 can be the 8th seed heading into the next round of playoffs and still be a team that you're worried about. Anytime Caps and Broken Blade are still on this roster, they are a team to be feared. We pivot over to the LCK side of things. Also, only 1 week in the bank in this new LCK Cup format. And obviously, sitting at the top of that table are the 2-0 squads in both Gen G, dominant fashion across the board, despite nearly throwing a game. Not throwing a game, losing a game to FearX. They still looked absolutely terrifying. And to a lesser degree and a little more surprising was how good D+ looked.
D+, very excited about them in this position. I think tentatively, because again, knowing the situation around rookies and how that can be for a team, but still very hopeful for this one from D+ Kia and the level that we're going to see them hopefully move out of the good, the great, into the elite zone of the LCK and firmly establish themselves there. Team with Showmaker. This has got to be one of the things that you're looking for right now. And of course, the rookies have played, the rookie, in the top lane, Siwu, has been fantastic. He's been very stable for this team. And I think one of the best things about it that helped him out is General Barrel returning to the team. That coordination and cohesion and synergy in his commands absolutely is there. And for him to be a player that hasn't worked with Barrel before, to now step into it and look pretty seamless with it, I think that is a great thing for D+ Kia. And again, how many great things do you want to really be talking about with Gen G? Because there's obviously 5 of them in all 5 roles that you want to talk about in this type of one. A little bit sloppy in some of these situations against FearX in the one where FearX should have been able to steal this one away. But Gen G, the power of Chovy, it's too much for them.
And, I think Duro, the one guy that hasn't proven himself already to be an elite player, so he's the main guy to monitor. And pretty good passing report card in that first day. I think Ruler was not at his peak level in this first week, but despite all that, Gen G remains the most terrifying squad. And then you get to the 2 teams that were destroyed by D+ and Gen G, Hanwha and T1, both huge bounce backs, dismantling KT Rolster and DRX to kind of make sure people remember, yes, there's a reason these 2 are contenders.
And the bounce back games were important because number 1 for Hanwha Life, Zeus gets his strong performance, gets a really leading the charge type of way in the victory, adding it to the camaraderie with his teammates. You put a win on the board, all these type of things. And in the same vein, Doran does it for T1. He has a great series against DRX, is very important in that one. So keeping track of both of those ones, the swap, if we will, between these 2 teams in the top side and what they've been able to do. Good, strong bounce backs from both these teams moving into week 2.
And that's exactly what you need in that barren group of this LCK Cup. Because if Hanwha and T1 aren't putting up, if either of them started 0-2, then this is pretty much done. Elder Dragon's taking the whole thing,
Yeah, it would not be much of a competition in this LCK Cup at that point. So good that we are getting a little bit of that pushback, a little bit more heat from your boys over there. But there's still some more in the LCK. There's still a couple teams waiting in that playoff type of zone, which we are starting to talk about.
Yeah, next tier up, waiting in the batter's box to tee up. We got DN Freaks in that 5 spot right beside KT. Those still feel like the teams that have the highest ceiling or the most potential to be looking into those playoffs.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why you're talking about them. For someone like KT, of course, you wanted maybe a little bit more against Hanwha Life, but not quite in that way. But for KT, pretty solid opening week. You're finding yourself not necessarily majorly behind in any type of way from these type of teams. And I think especially as far as that playoff picture, you're still in it. You're still in it. That's the important thing for me with KT at the week 1.
Yeah, and showing that I think BDD still at a very high level. Cuz had some of the best jungle numbers across the board in that first week. It's still, I think, bot lane is going to be that main question. Perfect didn't have the best week. So the fact that KT looks all right and there's still lots of room for improvement, still feel like the Freaks have the higher potential to maybe even, if you're really, cathedral high ceilings about this team, crack into that top 4. But we're a broken record at this point, how many times we've talked about the Freaks potentially cracking into that area. The bottom 4, you can feel okay about most of these teams. BNK, even though they're 0-2, we got them the highest of that bottom 4. A lot of that is that near win against Genji.
And that's banking off that everything that you did right in that early game, which you do got to give some credit. You got to get some points over because it doesn't just magically vanish because of the result against Genji. You do give BNK a little bit of that leeway, a little bit more of that potential to keep building up, keep challenging, maybe get an upset here or there against these teams in that playoff type of territory. That's what you got to be hoping for. You do have that disappointment of a missed opportunity. I feel it's got to be one of the big ones that's weighing in on that one, unfortunately. But for me, the eyes keep shifting on down, and I'm looking, I'm searching. Where are they? Well, we haven't talked about them yet. The Bros. Oh no, it's Brover. They're at the bottom. How is this happening?
And the harsh part is both DRX and Nongshim. The only reason they should really be ahead of them or be near BNK is their wins were against Bro. That's the painful part, is it wasn't even Bros losing to the top dogs or anything, and it gets worse because their first game this week is against Genji.
Everybody take a deep breath. It's very unfortunate for the Bros and what they've done. Does this mean that Kespa Cup is absolutely all an illusion? No, I don't really think so. I think still a lot of the reasons why you were excited or hopeful for this team can still exist. But they need time to develop, to figure it out, find their footing. And unfortunately for them, well, the time in the LCK Cup was week 1. Week 1 was your time to find your footing because week 2, you're thrown right into the lion's den with the match against Genji. And now with that 0-2 record heading into it, and again, you're picking up a lot in this week 2 that you need to keep yourself in contention to not be ousted after just 2-3 weeks.
And it seems like a perfect recipe for them to actually beat Genji, so we can all eat our words next week. When there's no pressure, no expectations, that's when the Bros are at their very best. I'll tell you who was at their very best in this opening week. The stud of the week, we're going back to D plus Kia. Lucid is asserting himself as a premier jungler in the LCK, right in that top 3 conversation with the likes of Canyon, Peanut, and Owner. He did it on multiple champions, and he did it against Owner himself in this series.
Holy, your boy Lucid coming on through, says sophomore slump. No way, Jose. Not with my guy Showmaker beside me. I ain't letting that happen out there.
He's got the sophomore jump. He's ascending, man.
Actually, you know what? He skips it all because it's not even about his sophomore season because it's Barrel's season. It's Barrel's taken over. He's under Commander Barrel's command now, and he's got absolutely excellent work in the jungle from him so far this split. I think one of the great things to look at is, of course, the champion pool. You're looking at wins on stuff like the Nidalee. You're throwing in the Vi, the Lilia, Pantheon action coming on in there. Your boy Lucid has been fantastic, continuing to build on what was a great rookie year last year and taking the reins in the jungle for this D plus Kia team that was fantastic this first week. Love that we're spotlighting Lucid.
Yeah, and again, the synergy that he and Siwoo have already is a really good and telltale sign that D+ Kia looking good to start things off. They've started hot in splits past before teetering off to some lukewarm temperatures. But despite all that, still very good after that first week. It wasn't so good. DRX may have picked up a win. They're dealing with poor Teddy, who's very sick with the flu. And Rich did not have himself a good week. He is our dud in the LCK, especially because Doran did not look good in that first series, and then he kind of destroys Rich in that next matchup, which is double L for Rich, but really he just seemed not on the same page with the rest of his team this whole week.
Oh, he's just still got that LCS pride, unfortunately. It's not going to, Rich, we love it. It's not going to work in the LCK, and especially against one of these matches like Doran. It's a really rough one. Again, you don't want to talk too much about someone struggling like this, but I think you look at Rich and his performance with DRX, which, by the way, quick shout-outs, best wishes for Teddy, hoping for the best from him to pull out from this hospitalization with the flu. But it's a rough go when you got Rich in the top side, and his performance was like that this week for the DRX squad. You're going to have to be able to hold yourself even, to a better level of accountability against some of these guys, these monsters in the top side of the LCK.
Yeah, and the only reason, or the main reason DRX was even picking up a win against the Bros was a bit of a 1v9 performance by Mr. Yukal in that mid lane, dragging him through there, because Rich on the Jace, on the Gragas, he did not look super comfortable. I will say, if Rich ends up playing in the LEC at some point, he's got to be the only guy who's played in all 4 major regions, right?
It kind of is a little bit of the Thanos gauntlet type of situation, but I guess maybe in order to really assemble the Thanos gauntlet of it all, you got to win the championships in all these regions might be the thing. And I think Rich is lacking in that regard.
I think he's a nice 0-3 in that regard right now.
A couple short.
Another guy who can flip-flop any week, like Hilla's saying. We could be talking about him as a stud in one of the next weeks to come for DRX. But that is all the time today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolutely stunning individuals. Thank you so much for the support as always, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.